have Marie Wallace. We have the Reverend in the house, Jerry Lacey. And we have Laura Parker, Angelique. And last but not least, Catherine Lee Scott. So the way we'll do things is, if you have a question, please raise your hand. It's a little bit warm in the room. We're trying to get the air conditioning. Hopefully that will happen soon. If not, we'll get Reverend Trance to put a spell on the group here, or Angelique. So who has a question? Raise your hand. Don't be shy. Oh, come on, guys. No questions? Okay, thank you.
How many people here have been to the Dark Shadows festivals?
Oh, wonderful. That's great.
That's great. Well, we have one every year, and this year it's in Tarrytown, New York, and it will be at the house, Lyndhurst, where the movies were filmed. Night of Dark Shadows and House of Dark Shadows. And you can tour the mansion and you can see all the rooms where the scenes, including the tower room where the scenes took place. So, and what's the date?
June 27th, which is the 48th anniversary of Dark Shadows.
Oh my wow.
And if we come down to the room where all 5 of us are signing, we've got some of these flyers, so please take a flyer with you and sign up soon because they're really filling up.
Is it actually held at the set, at the location? Wow.
Yes, at the mansion, yes. Yes.
I would love to see that.
We have a day in Collinwood, which is right next to the first.
Really? That would be really, really cool. Okay, question?
Yes. How were each and every one of you chosen for your role in Dark Shadows?
Okay, the question was, how was each person selected for their role in Dark Shadows?
Oh, well, we all auditioned. You have an agent and they send you up and you get the script and you learn the lines and you go in and you audition.
And I was a student at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and when I went in to audition, it was for Dan Curtis and Leila Swift. And all of the young women who were auditioning for we all auditioned for the role of Victoria Winters. And at the end of the day, I played Maggie Evans, Carolyn was played by Nancy Barrett, and Alexandra Molka, who is also a student at the American Academy, started playing Vicky. So we were all on the first day of the show, which was June 27th, 1966. Right.
I wish you would do that. Well, I auditioned with Jonathan Friend and on camera, and I'd done a lot of theater, and I'd always played, the Simperine ingenue, so I was playing that again. And he leaned in and he said, this part is a witch. I said, oh really? Because it was not in the lines. So then I turned my evil eyes to the camera, and I think that's what captured the part for me. Thank God he said that to me, because
Jerry, how did you get on the show?
Actually, I didn't audition. I think I might be the only one. Maybe Sharon.
No, I auditioned.
Did you? Well, I was doing a play in a theater down in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, at the Allenbury Playhouse. And, oh no, I'm sorry. I was in Virginia, regardless. I was doing a play, and David Ford and Nancy Barrett were there. David was in the play, and he said, gee, you would be great for our show. He said, it's just gone crazy. We've been on for a while, but it's just gone crazy because we've added a vampire. So David had recommended me to Dan Curtis, and when the play was over, I went to New York and met Dan, and basically he just said, are you available to come to work on Monday? And I said, yeah. And he said, good, we'll see you Monday.
That's
how I got there.
Yeah, I actually auditioned, but it was really funny. My agent called me, and I was doing a play up in New Hampshire, and he said, you want to audition for Dark Shadows? So I said, what is that? I didn't even know about that show. So I said, but of course. Anyway, I got back in town, he sent me to the casting director first, and she absolutely didn't think I was right for the part of Heath, in no way. But I happily had a strong agent, and he insisted that she send me and make an appointment for me, and I did, and they liked me very much. He called me back for the second audition, at which there was a blonde, a brunette, and me. And both of the other women had long, long, beautiful, straight hair, you know, like Vampira. And I had longish hair to here, but I said, I have to be different than they are. So I went in the corner and took out my handy brush, and I just started to tease my hair crazily, you know, and really full and sexy and everything, and kept watching what they were doing. And finally, I was the third person to come on, because by now it was an audition on camera. And so they were really looking at us physically, because we had passed the okay, fine, script part of the audition. So I watched them, and I heard what Dan wanted, and so he started saying to me, now walk towards the camera, now look away, give us a look. So I thought to myself, I remembered that in acting class, we did animals, so I did a lion, and I started walking towards him, and being very, very and the hair, mane of hair, and went backwards and over my shoulder and the whole thing. And someone told me later, I did get the job, but they said Dan Curtis had a script in his hand, he threw it up and he said, that's it! And so that's how I got my job. But incidentally, because I played several roles on the show, after I finished, I never had to audition again. And then they would just call me and say, are you available to do Crazy Jenny, or are you available? So it became a little repertory company for me.
Obviously, I was the little one, but I still had to audition just like everybody else. I was 10 years old. I had been doing commercials. I had been on another soap opera called Search for Tomorrow. And when I got the call, or my mother got the call to go on an audition, I really didn't know what it was for. I never really questioned that. So we went up to New York, and I went on this audition, and obviously, there's a lot of little girls, a lot of little girls in there, and I had long dark braids and freckles, and there were several other girls that were blonde and very pale looking and very ghostly, but I at that point did not know that it was for a ghost. I went in, I did the audition, and I went home, and I didn't think much of it, and we got a call back for me to come back, and when I came back, there were only 2 girls. Myself and this other young lady whose name was Eileen Burrell, and she had played a ghost before on Wagon Train or a show like that. So I guess I kind of figured she had the part, because at that point I knew that it was for a ghost, and it didn't work out that way. I think that maybe I looked a little bit more like Jonathan with the darkness, but I remember going into this boardroom type room where there was a lot of men sitting behind a very long table, and I felt very intimidated by them. I read, but I didn't have to work with anybody else. I was shocked when I got the job, absolutely shocked. I really wasn't sure what it entailed, but I was happy to be working. And who knew that, oh, so many years later, it would be so iconic. I feel very blessed to have been a part of it.
Thank you.
Now, originally, the Barnabas Collins character really wasn't introduced till like episode like 201 or something like that, I believe. And I read that the character really wasn't meant to be like the main character, you know, like it kind of like grew into that. Like at what point did the popularity of the show, like all of a sudden, I mean, I was in grade school when it happened, and like we literally used to run home from school to see the show. Like at what point did you guys realize that it had become, you know, the the show to watch, so to speak?
You know, it was almost instantaneous as soon as Jonathan came on. And the story is, and by the way, I've sold out on Dark Shadows Return to Collinwood. Does anybody have a copy of the book they can just hold up? It's 5 decades of Dark Shadows. And in that book, there it is. In that book, I tell the story that Jonathan tells. He was on his way to San Diego, I think, to teach. He was going to be, he wanted to direct and teach. And his agent caught him as he was heading to the airport and told him to go in and audition, hold off. So he went in and auditioned. He got the job of Barnabas Collins. And it was really meant to be short term. But he showed up, and I was there that very first day when Jonathan showed up in costume with the cape, the wolf's head cane, the ring, and it was one of those shivery moments because we all looked at him. Sort of twin feelings. One, oh my God, we're into ghosts and goblins. You know, we're doing some sort of Halloween thing here. We were doing sort of a gothic romance. And the other thing, and I really do mean that it was kind of a shivery moment because there was already something really compelling about Jonathan in that getup. And from the very beginning, he just created this wonderfully iconic character. And one of my favorite scenes in all of the shows that I did was the one where Jonathan, as Barnabas, comes to the Collinsport Diner, and I keep the restaurant open and put on another cup of coffee and get to know him, which is one of my favorite episodes. Laura? Well, you remember the first time you worked with Jonathan. It was a shivery moment. He was really...
The question was, when did the show take off?
It
That
took
was
off
before I was... but then they decided that when he became such a popular character, that it would be fun to go back in time and tell the story of how he became a vampire. So then when they decided to go back in time to 1795, is that right? Then I was brought on the show to be the one who would eventually curse him and turn him into a vampire because he seduced me and abandoned me, and he was going to be sorry for that. So by then he was already established as a character, and the show was already getting piles of fan mail piling up in the back. You know, it was head swimming for me to suddenly be in New York and to be working on a soap opera with all of these marvelous actors, many of them theater, stage actors. And Jonathan was, he was really great. He was a real sweetheart.
I guess it was the same with me. The show was already popular, before I got there. I don't know how long one was, but it had been several months. I don't know when Jonathan started. Do you, Catherine?
Yeah, he started, but it was not quite 6 months after the show was on the air. We were in our certainly our second 13-week cycle. You know, shows run in these 13-week cycles.
Oh, it was that soon. I thought
it was the second one. Yeah, it was, before that, it was what we call a bodice ripper. It was just a gothic romance. And, strange things going on in the big house up on the hill. But the moment, and what's really interesting, Leela Swift was our director. And we already had the sea captain come on the show. And you could see him, and he appeared as a ghost. And then Sharon.
Yes.
Yeah, you came on as little Sarah.
In 1795, I got to as a real life girl.
And
actually, I started with you as a ghost when you were incarcerated in the basement.
And that was when Leela Swift said, "Oh, we are now doing a ghost story." And I remember when she went into Dan was at the studio that day and went in and said, "You realize what we're doing now, because you were seen alone in the room."
Right.
And she said, "Now we're doing a ghost story." So it was really when we went sort of paranormal,
And
supernatural, that everything took off.
I would guess that you certainly knew the popularity when you would try to leave the studio and there were throngs of people out there, you know, that wanted your autograph and pictures taken. I would think at that point you kind of go, oh, wow, check it out.
I remember I was in Africa on a photo safari with my boyfriend at the time, who was a Time magazine photographer, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, we were at an animal reserve in a Land Rover, and we were watching a pride of lions feeding on a wildebeest, and another Land Rover pulled up just, I don't know, maybe 15 feet away from us, and I heard this little child's voice saying, "Mommy, Mommy, that's Maggie Evans." We were in the middle of Africa. So we all have stories like that when you realize, whoa, this is becoming
Then you know
popular.
it's a big deal.
Jonathan was the heart and soul of Dark Shadows. Barnabas was the show was dying. It was going to go off the air. And so it was an inspired choice to, as you say, go supernatural. And unprecedented at the time. And now we're just surrounded by werewolves and vampires and goblin ghouls, and you don't think anything of it. But back then it was quite different, very strange. And we didn't know what to make of. Where should he bite the guys? Well, he can't bite the guys on the neck, which was an admission of the fact that biting itself is sexual. But bite the guys on the wrist, but bite the girls on the neck. And there were long discussions about this. You can imagine.
I never got bit. He did warm me up, but I got even for that too. Nobody ever bit me.
Well, you don't have to feel sorry. Who else has a question? Right here.
Jeff Clark actually got bit in the neck by a vampire because before he got bit, the sweater slipped down and the single feet mark. He did get bit in the neck. When you all auditioned for your different roles, who were some of the other people that you beat out? Did any of them get into anything big or anybody you know?
The question was, who else had done auditions for the show that maybe didn't get the role that we would know as famous people now? That we would know as famous people now?
Yeah, I honestly don't know anyone that I was competing with or auditioning with that went on to do other things. I'm not sure.
No, I don't know.
And nobody ever came up to me and over the years and said, "Oh, it's so funny, I auditioned for that role as well." And I have to tell you, toward the end, it was really funny. I did an early morning camera test, and I showed up to do a scene as Maggie Evans with 2 different Burt Devlins, and one of them was Mitch Ryan, and the other one was an actor studio actor that I also knew. And it was Mitch, of course, who got the role. But otherwise, I don't remember seeing any other women, any other girls auditioning for Maggie Evans.
Was the show, I know when it was on television, was it live? I mean, it was like live, right? I mean,
Live
it was
tape,
filmed.
yes, live tape.
Oh, okay.
So that it might have been shown a week later, but as far as we're concerned, that was a live show and you did not stop for anything, even if your hair went on fire.
I was going to say, were there any like bloopers or things that happened, like right as you're in the middle of the film?
If a fly happens to land on your person, just keep going. Just pretend it's not there. It never actually happened to me, but it seemed to have happened to almost everyone else. The infamous Collinwood fly.
Well, there's actually a blooper tape, which is or a collection of bloopers. I guess it's on DVD now. And you can see the mics coming into the shots. You can see prop people walking across the background. You can see someone going through the graveyard and the styrofoam gravestones fall over, you know. See someone slam a door and the set shakes and the painting falls off the wall and someone tries to put it back and they can't find the nail. And literally hundreds of things went wrong. It was like doing summer stock because we were so under-rehearsed. We'd only had 3 or 4 rehearsals. You know, only 1, maybe 2 on the set. And we had ice water in our veins just to get through it because we were not allowed to stop. I think you had to actually curse in order to get them to stop.
Which Jonathan did.
Jonathan did it once. He got so exasperated at his performance that he said, oh, and that they had to stop, they had to edit. But the editing machines were on across town. So it was expensive to edit, yeah. And so, you know, we learned to do it like we were doing it, but it felt like theater. And it was quite a challenge.
And we had to finish doing our show. It was done on Kinescope. We had to finish our show because immediately afterward it was the weather and news report. So we were really confined to a specific period of time in which we could do the show. And there was another time when one of the actors became incapacitated. He got drunk and showed up after his so-called lunch. And we had to come in on a Sunday and redo the show.
That was the first.
Oh, that was an incredible day. And we just heard the disembodied voice of Leela Swift, our director, saying, "That's it. We're all back on Sunday to do this show." I'm not going to tell. It's an actor I'm so terribly fond of, I will not divulge. And can you imagine all of these?
And I think at the time when some of these incidents were happening, you know, if anyone was concerned about them, the rule of thought was, oh, don't worry about it. Nobody's ever going to see it.
Right.
You know, little did we know that it would be etched for forever. You know, now everybody's got their DVD out looking for all the bloopers.
In fact, Dan Curtis was quoted as saying, "It's just a bunch of school teachers and kids watching." So,
Question in front row.
I just wanted to know, how did you actually feel about the bloopers? I thought they were great. I thought it added to the charm.
we were devastated. We were devastated. There were times when you walked out of the studio and you were almost in tears and you were begging to redo the show. And that's, of course, when Dan said nobody will ever see it. And Sharon's absolutely right about that. You just didn't get another crack at it. It was very good training for those of us whom this was our first job. It was excellent training, but it was also really devastating when you knew that you could have done it so much better and things happened that were beyond your control that had to do with props. But I just said something a moment ago that I'm going to go back to, which is that, you know, we were in our own little studio, and I think that